What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's going on with the economic calendar moving forward, talk about other factors involving the markets, and what you should be watching for as time progresses. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends in just one day, and it's tomorrow, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So I just wanted to say that right now the market's showing some weakness. As I got this nice little pump a couple of days ago on Thursday, hitting these new all-time highs. After that delayed reaction that we got, before we saw this big little dump, followed by another rebound. We got a nice little rebound after that, only to start seeing some more downside again. So it looks like it's a little bit of a bearish structure right here, making a lower high. And we're just barely at support right here at our 20 EMA, which could start breaking pretty easily. So this looks a little bit more bearish, and I do anticipate a little bit more downside is going to be coming. But whether or not the downside lasts will depend on a catalyst for tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be Monday, September 30th, 2024. So please note that we have Bowman giving a speech in the morning, which is very minor. Then we have the Chicago PMI at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, followed by the Dallas Fed manufacturing numbers. So tomorrow, 15 minutes and 1 hour after market open, look for some volatility as we have some data coming out. My guts tells me this might cause a little downside in the markets. I do anticipate that this will be used for that. But in my opinion, later on during the day, we do have another catalyst that's going to be Jerome Powell giving a speech at 1:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Whatever Jerome Powell says could shake the markets as well. So I don't know if he's going to cause us to pump back up or not. That's why I would say that if you are trading, to be very careful. I would likely be mindful of the fact that the market could switch directions very quickly. And we'll see how things go. But with Jerome Powell giving a speech, we'll see what he ends up saying about monetary policy. Once again, it could affect what the market views for interest rates. Right now, we think there's about a 53.3% chance we get a 50 basis point cut, and about a 46.7% chance we get a 25 basis point cut. So we'll see which one it ends up being. But once again, Jerome Powell is still going to cause some more uncertainty and volatility as time goes on. So expect some interesting price action when his speech starts, and we'll see how things go from there. I also want to mention that right now, the fear and greed index is currently at greed. We were closer to extremes. Now we're slowing down a bit as the market is pulled back. Also, momentum is no longer at extremes. It's starting to slow down as well. So we're starting to see the slowdown right here within the markets. That's not really a surprise looking at how things have been. The put to call option ratio is still dipping quite a bit. We're now at these extremes, and that's very important to note. So I say that because as time goes on, as that goes lower, that tends to reach the levels in which when we're at basically highs in the markets, and that's when we start to pull back. And the VIX is currently at neutral. We'll have to see how this ends up looking as well. So be very mindful of that. I also want to mention that right now the market's in a very interesting place because Monday has very minor earnings, but then for Tuesday we have Nike, not to mention Levi's on Wednesday. But besides that, that's it for data. Now let's just focus on the charts from this point on. So what do I see for the market moving forward? The answer is I think that there's going to be a risk of some downside coming, especially as we have manufacturing numbers coming out. The last manufacturing numbers were kind of weak, and that does increase the odds of us maybe dipping a bit. So I think tomorrow the market's going to wait for the Chicago PMI, then the manufacturing numbers may pop a little bit, then continue with this downwards move. We have our 20 EMA as support. We're currently just barely near it, so it's going to be at 570.68. If we fail to hold that, our next support target is going to be 568. If that fails us, we go all the way down to 566, close to the 50 EMA. Those are going to be your supports to watch for. We have resistance to watch for this imbalance towards 572, not to mention 574. My gut tells me 570 is going to be our support, followed by 568 and 566, and there's going to be a risk of some downside coming. Now, the way it's going to go is we might start off with a little pop in the morning. Then we're going to be dipping with all the data coming out in the morning with the manufacturing numbers. Most likely we come down to either 568 to 566. And then when we come down here, the question is, will we last here? That's going to depend on what Jerome Powell says. When Jerome Powell's speech starts at 1:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, he could launch things back up and we could see SPY attempt to bounce. So make sure you're mindful of that possibility. We'll see what the big guy ends up saying because he is known for being one of the biggest market makers and it's not always easy to predict. So please be careful, guys. When Jerome Powell speaks, the market could go either way. So don't be overly bearish or overly bullish. We may start off with a dip and we'll see what happens after that. For the S&P 500 mini futures, yes, we have a little bit of a dip coming. So If we hold above 5,800 or very close to the 20 EMA at 57.93, we could attempt to rebound back up towards the 5,800s. If we fail to do so, we're going to likely be dipping all the way down to about 57.60. My gut is telling me this is going to likely continue to dip, and we're at risk of coming all the way down towards the 57.60 area very, very soon. Now, my guts tells me what's going to happen is we're going to attempt to get back up to the 20 EMA, the 57.90 area. Then we could reject to start dipping all the way down towards 57.60, all the way down towards our 50 EMA. I think we might dip a little bit, and we'll see if we get a bounce off our 50 EMA or not, because Jerome Powell is going to be another factor. We'll see how that goes, but anticipate a little bit of downside, and we'll see what the reaction is to Jerome Powell's speech. For Nvidia, we look a little bit more bearish because we are losing our 20 EMA, the 121 support. As we're losing that support, the next level is 118.7, followed by 116. We have resistance at 122, not to mention 124. With the head and shoulders, my gut is telling me that 118 and 116 are likely coming. So look for some downside, and we'll see if we get a bounce or not. But I do anticipate a downside move. Make sure you're prepared for that just to be safe. For Bitcoin, and once again, kind of struggling right over here. We're making lower highs right here, so you want to be a little bit careful. If we reject here, we're looking for 65,400 as our support. Maybe this resistance all the way up here around this 66,000 area. My gut tells me it might be retesting the 66,000 area and kind of consolidate. Then we could be dipping lower towards the mid 65,000s. I say that because the daily is showing weakness. We're kind of flat on the 4-hour, but we're going to be a little bit careful with this. We might see some consolidation, a small dip on Bitcoin. We're forming kind of like a doji on the daily. So we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. For others out there, we also have Tesla. So I think Tesla's going to outperform the markets. I think Tesla may continue to attempt to push all the way up to the mid 260s because we have a lot of momentum, good volume, and lots of hype associated with deliveries. So Tesla's going to be in a league of its own because Tesla has deliveries coming out on, I believe it's Wednesday, October 2nd. So anticipating that, there might be a good chance Tesla holds up very well. Looks bullish to me. As long as we don't lose 253, we're going to likely go higher. Look at 253 as critical support, followed by 250. If that fails us, we're going to be dipping back down to 244. As long as we hold this though and we remain bullish, we're looking for basically 262. If that breaks, we have 265, then 270 coming. My gut tells me this is going to be pushing for 265 towards the previous resistance. There's a good chance that Tesla attempts to pump even more. I think that's very favorable, so we'll see how things end up going. For NQ, we're kind of dipping a bit, so make sure you look at 20,250 as our resistance. If we don't break that, we're looking for support at 20,000 flat. If 20,000 flat fails us, we're looking for a dip all the way down towards 19,800. But I think what's going to happen is we might dip closer to 20,000 flat before we see an attempt to rebound. We'll see if we get that rebound depending on what Jerome Powell says. But my guts is telling me that we're going to likely dip down to 20,000 flat. So make sure you watch for that very carefully, guys. 20,000 could be coming, and we'll see how things end up going from here. For the QQQ, we look bearish. I think that this is going to likely follow the trend on NQ. So despite the double top leg structure and the attempt to fill this gap up here, I think we came just short of doing so. So there might be a little bit of an attempt to dip. We're testing previous resistance becoming support around 485. If that fails us, we're looking for 482, then 480 is our supports. The 50 EMA is also at 480. We have resistance at 488, followed by the 491 area. My gut is telling me that this is going to likely be dipping lower, all the way down to about 482, if not 480, for a small dip as we're seeing tech kind of slow down. We'll see if we bounce off 480 or not. If we don't bounce off that, we have a gap to fill all the way down to about 475. So I do anticipate some downside on the QQQ. Please be very mindful of that. For Aapl, we're kind of rejecting right here, forming kind of like a rejection structure. We have 226.94 is our support. If that fails us, we're looking for basically 225. If this holds us, we could try to rebound for 230. My guts tells me that we could be dipping all the way down to 225 or below. It might be a little bit of a dip because when you look at Aapl, we had this high up here, we came down, made a lower high, we came down. So it's still showing that weakness that's going to be very pivotal for how it ends up moving in the future. So that's what I'm seeing, at least for Aapl. It might be a little bit more downside coming as you have a lower high that could be established, and that could lead to more downside. NIO announced a very, very big partnership, so this looks bullish to me with Tesla. I think this might be pushing for at least 7. Then we have 7.5 above and up with a nice double bottom. It looks very bullish after its whole percent day and 180 million in volume. So I anticipate more upside. We could be pushing for this $7 area. For Palantir, I just want to say that Palantir is looking a little bit weaker. There's a head and shoulders like structure that's developing, which could lead to some downside. And we have support at 36 flats. Look at resistance around this 37.5 area and support at 36. My gut tells me 36 is likely coming, if not below that, all the way down towards the 34.8 area. Previous resistance becoming support. Look for downside on Palantir, and we'll see how things end up going. For super micro, we look like we got this big rejection only to rebound a little bit. We're looking at resistance at 433. We could be pushing for 433, and we'll see if we get a rejection off that. So look for a little bit more upside, but then watch to see if we get a rejection as we're going to be hitting our EMAs, which will be some tough resistance. We had some negative news after we saw the news about, I believe it was the DOJ. They have come out and they're doing an investigation. So this is very important. So this could lead to some downside. It might try to push a little higher for 433, and we'll see if we get a rejection off that or not. For Rivian is once again on a bit of a downwards move right over here, making lower highs so far. We have this resistance to watch for at this 12.27 area. If we fail to hold it, we're going to be looking for a dip all the way down towards about 11.6. If that fails us, we're dipping all the way down towards 11.2. So we could be trying to push for 12.27, and we'll see if we reject or not. Look for a little bit of a push right over here up to this resistance in the 12s, and we'll see how things end up going. I do think there's going to be an attempt to get a little higher before it tries to come back down, but it may try to hold up with Tesla. So there might be an attempt to get back up to the 12s temporarily. For SoFi, I just want to say SoFi is looking so kind of decent right here. If we don't lose 7.8, this could try to push for $8 again. Might try to outperform the market. If we lose 7.8, we turn back down. So I'll be watching to see, is this a high here? Are we about to establish a lower high to start dipping? Or is it going to be the exact opposite to make a very, very interesting move? I'll be watching that. So I'll be looking at this very, very critical level right over here. I think that we have this very important support at 7.8 to watch for. We'll see if that holds. If we lose this, we start dipping back down towards 7.45. If we hold this, we have this resistance around 8, not to mention all the way up here around 8.2. So watch it very carefully. We could dip a little bit lower. If 7.8 fails us, we're going to be dipping down to about 7.5. I think there's a good chance of this dipping, so be very mindful of that. For the IWM, we look a little bit weaker here. And despite the fact that we're trying to get a bullish cross in the PPO, the issue I'm seeing is the fact that it's struggling to hold up. And could it be that this is a high that was established? We came down, made a lower high. So we have this resistance at 222. If we break this, we turn back to bullish. If we lose 220, we turn bearish, and we're looking for 218 for the gap fill. My gut is telling me that this is going to rebound a bit tomorrow morning, then start slowly pushing down to fill this gap. And this might be a lower high to be established for a small dip. I think that's the most likely case. I think that this might dip a little bit with the broader markets, so be prepared for that just to be safe. Now, with this dip coming, we'll see what Jerome Powell causes. Will he cause some kind of big bounce or not? We will just have to wait and see. For AMD, we look a little bit more bearish. I could see this easily coming down to about 162, if not 158. That's where I think our 50 EMA is going to be by tomorrow. So I see us dipping all the way down to the 160 area. We'll see if we get a bounce or not. So look for some downside. We'll see what the reaction is at 162 and 160, and then we'll see how things go. If we lose 156, we turn even more bearish. And I think that 160 is going to be our very, very important level. We'll see how things go from here. So look for some downside in AMD, then we'll see how things end up going. For ARM is barely at 145. If we hold this, we could attempt to rebound for 150. If we lose this, we're going to be looking for 141. So I think that we could be dipping lower for 141 very soon if we don't hold 145. So it really depends on that. If we don't, I think 141 is coming. We'll see if we bounce. So I favor 141, but just to be safe, we'll see if we lose 145 for confirmation. As of right now, coin is looking more bullish with Bitcoin, so it could attempt to go a little bit higher. It might not be done yet. We could see a touch of this imbalance at 195 before it tries to reject. So far, it looks bullish. It could try to continue after we got some bullish news. We also have these gaps to fill, so it might outperform the market, hit 195 to 198. So I see a little bit more upside for coin, and then we'll see if it rejects closer to like the 200 area. So look for some upside tomorrow, and then we'll see what the reaction happens to be. For Amazon, we look bearish on the daily, but let me just call this out on the 4-hour because the 4-hour shows us the same thing. So we got to reclaim 188. If we don't do that, I think we come all the way down to 184. If that fails us, we're looking for 182. So make sure you watch those levels very carefully. 184 and 182 will be tested if we don't hold above 188. If we break that, we're looking for 190. But as of right now, there's going to be a risk of us dipping all the way down to the lower levels. For Meta is kind of rejecting here. We had like this high here, kind of like a bearish divergence. We're kind of dipping. So here's the thing. We have 564.46 as our supports. If that fails us, we could be dipping all the way down towards the 560 area, then 554 below that. We have support at 564, so if we hold this, we could try to rebound for 574. My gut tells me we're going to dip a little bit towards 564 or even below that, all the way down towards the 560 area. So I think some downside is very probable. I think Meta is looking a little bit weaker here, and I think that we could be forming like a head and shoulders like structure. So maybe we get a little pop tomorrow to like 570, then we could be dipping lower all the way down to like the 560 zone. So look for some downside. If we lose 564, that's going to be your confirmation of this dipping lower. So please keep that in the back of your guys' minds. For Bitcoin, not Bitcoin, Microsoft. So I don't know why I said that. Microsoft, we look more bearish. We basically have resistance at 429 and 431, and our supports at 424. When looking at this, we had a top here, kind of like a double top like structure, and now we're forming a nice little rejection structure right here. So this is like our high, came down at a lower high, and we're continuing to fall all the way down to about 424. My gut tells me that 424 is going to be one support, followed by about the 420 area. So this is favoring some downside as time goes on. I think that 424 is going to be our support to watch for on Microsoft. There's a good chance we start dipping all the way down there. So watch for that on Microsoft. Look for some downside towards 424, and we'll see how things go. For Google, now this is a little tricky because we're barely at this key level right here. Now we have a double top like structure. If this is going to play out, you want to see Google lose 164.87. If it does not hold this, we go all the way down to 163.94, followed by 162. It looks like a double top, so the odds do favor maybe getting a rejection here, but I need to see confirmation if we don't hold 165. If we hold above 165, we could try to rebound for 167. This depends on what we see tomorrow. My gut is telling me that we might see a little bit of a dip to about 163, but it might not be that bad. And then whether or not we get a bounce will depend on Jerome Powell, the big guy. So don't forget about that. That's going to be very important as well. For DJT, we're attempting to rebound. We're looking at 15.11 as resistance. If we break this, we could be going all the way back up towards about 16 flat. I think we might be getting very close to about 15.5 before it tries to reject and come back down to 14.16. So watch and see how things end up going. For the VIX, we're trying to rebound right here. We're looking for resistance at 17.15. If this breaks, the VIX could technically try to fill this gap up to the 18 area. So I think the VIX has a gap to fill. Maybe this is going to push a little bit higher as the market dips. The market dipping could cause that. And also, if you look at the daily on the VIX, we have a gap to fill. So once again, I'm seeing a double gap. So right here, right here, I think the VIX is going to be making its way down to these lower levels. So I think that's with this, I'm sorry, it's going to go up to these higher levels. Excuse me, guys. We have this gap to fill all the way up here. I think we're looking for 17.5 on the VIX to 18. I think that what's going to happen is the market dips, causing the VIX to go upwards, and that's going to help it try to fill the gap over here. Now, tomorrow, the 10-year is kind of dipping right here. So this could be interesting for the markets as we have a gap to fill. If this does dip, maybe the market could rebound off Powell's speech. We'll see about that. But for now, I'm not as worried about this. It's not really affecting the market as much. So if it does dip a bit, that does open the possibility of a rebound that could be happening after Powell. We'll see, but I'm not as 100% certain about that because of the fact that it depends on Jerome Powell and the reactions and different factors like that. So my gut is telling me the market's going to go lower. This may also get dragged down depending on Powell, but then Jerome Powell will be the thing that determines if we get a bounce or not later on. The dollar. Here's the thing about the dollar. Okay, we have technically this is a bullish divergence on the dollar. Let me just double check this. Yeah, it is technically a bullish divergence forming on the dollar. So we have a bullish divergence and we hit the support around 100. We formed a wick here. So usually what you want to see is a little bit of a rebound for 100.6. So it looks to me like the dollar may attempt to rebound a little bit because the market is going to basically be dipping. So this is going to drag the market a little bit lower with the dollar once again trying to push higher. That's most likely what's going to be happening. So my view is very simple. I think some EVs like Tesla, like NIO, are going to be outperforming the market, trying to push higher with deliveries and all these factors coming up. However, there's a big however. For other stocks out there, such as the QQQ for Tesla and the others, there's a very good chance that these are going to be dipping a little bit for a slight pullback. I'm not saying the market's crashing. This could just be a temporary dip for the time being, but we look a little bit more bearish off the bearish divergence that's forming and the fact that we're kind of like starting to lose our 20 EMAs and other key supports. So my view of the market is a little bit of downside for tomorrow/Tuesday. We could attempt to get a temporary bounce with Jerome Powell's speech. So just be very mindful of that. Once again, the guy is speaking at 1:55 p.m. We'll see what he ends up saying. I mean, at this point, it just seems like he's just repeating the same things again and again, and they're just using him as an excuse to move things around, to move liquidity around the markets. That's what these institutions are doing. They just use Jerome Powell and these different catalysts as excuses, and I think that's what's going to likely continue. So Tomorrow, don't forget, there's going to be some volatility with the data coming out. Market may tip a little bit, and then once Jerome Powell starts to speak, we could attempt to rebound, but I don't think it's going to last. I still favor the downside for now for the markets, just for the time being, right? I'm not talking about 2 weeks out, 4 weeks out. I'm just talking about for tomorrow and going into Tuesday. The next 1 to 2 days, I do anticipate some downside. I think the charts greatly suggest that. Also, seasonality would technically kind of like favor that view as well. So that's what my view is for the time being. With that being said, I just want to say I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Have a great day, night, or evening, whatever or whatever time it is wherever you guys are. Just know that we have football season coming up. A lot of football games, so enjoy some sports. Have a very, very great time. Spend time with loved ones and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'll be back tomorrow before the market opens to give you guys another update. I just want to say I appreciate you guys again for listening, and I'll see you guys very soon on the next one tomorrow morning. Thank you and peace out.